Hi, this is Ann Buffington at the University of Wisconsin, and this video is going to talk about what you do for screening for the best case, worst case R01 study after you have looked up the patient's medical record number in the MRN lookup function in REDCap. Before I dive into the REDCap piece of things, just a general reminder that you are screening 2 weeks out. So today is Thursday, the 14th of January, 2021. And if I was conducting screening today, I would be looking at patients scheduled to be seen by study nephrologists on Thursday, the 28th of January, so 14 days from today. And we do ask that you create a REDCap record for every patient that is screened. However, you do want to check first to see if they've been screened before. We only create one REDCap record per patient. So that's why we start with the MRN lookup. We want to avoid having you redundantly screen patients. But for the purposes of this, we will assume that you have already checked and found that their MRN is not in the MRN lookup, and you need to create a new REDCap record for them. So you would start by navigating to redcap.surgery.wisc.edu. So that's redcap.surgery.wisc.edu. Log in. You will not see this many projects. You will just see a couple projects, and you would navigate to the R01 Patient and Family Project. You go, again, we always start with the MRN lookups. We click on Search Dashboard, and I'm just going to enter a preposterously long MRN that I know is not in the system to illustrate what it would look like if they did not already have a record. So this would be a patient who has never been screened. Nothing shows up when I search that MRN. So I proceed to clicking in this gray box on the upper right-hand side, Add New Record. From here, this gray button here will open up the screening form. So click on that. And it starts with, it's going to ask you for their MRN. And again, I'll just enter something preposterous and made up here. You can see at the top, it has already assigned them a screening ID number. So this is patient number 55. If they are found eligible, consent, and are placed on study later on, they'll be given their actual study ID number. But for now, their reference number is 55. You would then go through and start to fill this out. It is hopefully self-explanatory, but I'll walk through it here. So you would pick which nephrologist it's for. I know that we don't have 25 at any site, but we just had lots of slots to fill in. So I'll say this is nephrologist number 4. I will select the age. They do have to be 60 or older to qualify. And then I'll decide if there's any, this next field is just asking if there's any special exclusion criteria that apply to this patient. Most of the time you won't click anything here. You can just move on, but these are things that sort of automatically strike them out of consideration for the study, and we don't want you to have to keep looking in their chart. We just want you to quickly note this and be able to move on to screening the next patient. So something like if the patient is a prisoner, we are not IRB approved to have prisoners in this study. So if that applied, you would click it and immediately be given this red box informing you that they do not qualify. Something else like no address listed in the medical record gives you a yellow box, which means, we don't have enough information to screen them. We do have to have an address for patients in the study because part of the protocol that's IRB approved specifies sending recruitment materials by mail and then calling them. So most of the time you will not click anything here, but these are just a few things to bear in mind. Next is going to ask if there's an EGFR available from within the last year. It does have to be within the last year. If I say no, again, it's going to give you this sort of unknown eligibility. We don't know if they qualified because there's no lab value to enter here. If there is one within the last year, you could go ahead and enter it. So again, it has to be less than 20. If it's 20 or higher, they do not meet criteria. So you can see if I enter 27 right away, I get a red box stopping me. So the red, yellow, and green boxes really, hold your hand as you walk through this and explain if they're meeting criteria or not. So I will say 16. I will enter the date, and you can click on the little calendar and do it that way. You can also click today. You can also manually enter it. You'll see if I make it a date that is further than a year old, it will warn me. Again, it has to be within a year. So I will go ahead and say that this is just from just say a month ago. Patients cannot be on dialysis and be in the study. So if I say yes, they're on dialysis, I will get that red box informing me that they are ineligible. If I don't know if they're on dialysis, yellow box for unknown eligibility. If I say no, they're not on dialysis, the form gives me the next question. I can keep screening. Similarly, they do need to speak English to be in the study. So if their language is unknown, you get the yellow box here. They don't speak English, they are ineligible. And if they speak English, you can move on to the next question. So for decision-making capacity, they do need to have DMC to be in the study. And essentially, you're just looking for any clear indicator that they do not have DMC. So if you, hopefully that is fairly well noted in the chart, and we'll talk later about checking with nephrologists if you have any questions about eligibility criteria. So that would be another way to confirm this, but you're really just trying to rule out any obvious indication that they don't have DMC. So I will say, yes, they do have it. Next, it will ask you if there's an albumin lab value from within the last 2 years. And as noted right here in the form, this doesn't actually impact their eligibility. It's just something that we want to use to characterize the sample or sort of the larger pool from which we drew the sample. So you can enter one here if there is one from the last 2 years. If there's not, there's instructions right below explaining what to do, and that's going to involve clicking on this little M right here and selecting either not available or unknown. So I'll continue to scroll down here. I'll just say not available. The next field is going to ask what comorbidities the patient has. This is where you sort of have to do a little more scrutiny of the chart, of course, looking at the problem list, perhaps also checking some free text clinic visit notes if you think that may be helpful. But what's built in here, the next little grayed out field here where it says total points for Charlson, this is a built-in calculator for the Charlson Comorbidity Index. So it is automatically factoring in their age because they get a point for every decade of life after the age of 50. And then they also get these point values for comorbid conditions that they have. So you can see if I start adding these, the number down below will go up or down as I add and remove them. So you don't need to do anything with the grayed out field. It's sort of background behind the scenes, and it doesn't allow you to edit it, but what you enter here does factor into it. The next question down really gets to the point of where you've finished your review of the chart and you now need to run it by the nephrologist and ask them this question, which we do need nephrologists to be asked the surprise question, which is, would you be surprised if this patient died in the next year? And there's a criteria, an eligibility criterion, where patients have to meet one or more of the following, and it's noted here. They either need to be greater than 80 years of age, have a Charlson score of greater than 4, or have the nephrologist say, no, I wouldn't be surprised if the patient died in the next year. So they need to have one or more of those things apply. For this patient, as I've entered them, you can see I had a Charlson score of 9 for them. So it doesn't matter how the nephrologist answers this question, they do still meet the criteria. So I will say, in this case, maybe the nephrologist said, yeah, I'd be surprised if they passed away. You can also, when you reach out to the nephrologist to ask them this question, that would be a good opportunity as well to ask about anything that you can't find in their chart. So if you have a question around decision-making capacity or what comorbidities apply, that is your chance to ask them as well. You would then note who answered the surprise question. In most cases, it would be the nephrologist, but if they've said to you previously that they designate someone else to answer these screening questions, you could note that here. And that leads into the next variable very well, which is, did the nephrologist exclude the patient for any other reason? So in the nephrologist consent form, it does note that they will have the opportunity to exclude any patient that they wish to. This doesn't, in our past work, this really has not come up very often and hopefully won't come up with any frequency in this study. But again, we do want to, it's a courtesy that we offer to them. You can see if I click yes, here's some possible reasons they might give for excluding a patient, including this other, where you have, if you click on the other, it'll give you a free text spot to note why it is that the nephrologist excluded them. If that's happening with any frequency, the nephrologist is excluding, more than one patient, please do reach out to us. It might indicate that they're having some concerns around the study or just want to understand study processes more. Similarly, we ask if you, the research coordinator, would like to exclude the patient for any other reason. This is even more rare. This has never come up in our prior trials. So you have the chance to note it here and to do it, but I would ask that you do reach out to us beforehand to run that situation by us. So typically that would be answered no. And scrolling down a little bit, we get a green box at the bottom here, which means hurrah, hurrah, they have met the screening eligibility criteria to this point. Moving back up one section here, it asks, how was this patient approached for the study? So did you approach them, did you ask them if they'd like to participate by phone? Or did you actually approach them in person in clinic? Last option here, not approached. There's a variety of reasons why a patient could be eligible but not approached, and I've noted a very exhaustive list here of why that might happen. So perhaps they no-showed, they rescheduled, they didn't reschedule, the clinic was too busy and you felt like you just couldn't, broach the subject with them without really sort of impeding clinic flow. You were too busy to approach, perhaps you were in another clinic recruiting for another study. You were not able to mail recruitment materials to them, and we are IRB required to do so. They died before their appointment. And then, of course, we always give you this last recourse, which is the other text field to describe some other reason why they were not approached. But in this case, I'll go ahead and change. I'll change it to that they were approached, by phone. The section down here asks you to record a pre-appointment screening decision. So it's based on your screening to date in advance of their appointment. What is their status? And the green box that precedes it coaches you on how to answer this. So in this case, it wants you to enter provisionally eligible, consented, and scheduled to see study nephrologists. So you found them eligible based off your screening. They consented to the study and they're scheduled to see the nephrologist. So I will click that. I do want to note this provisionally eligible term simply means that they are eligible, but it is pending a final EGFR check on the date of their appointment, and it's dependent upon them showing up for the appointment. So we do ask, speaking to the first part of that, we do ask that you do a final EGFR check on their appointment date, simply because a new lab value could have come in. If you screen them today on the 14th and they're seen on the 28th, there's a decent chance that a lab could come in on the 26th, and maybe the EGFR, it could be potentially a little higher and disqualify them. So we always want you to check for that. Also, again, they do need to actually show up for the appointment with the study nephrologist. So that is what provisionally eligible means. It means, assuming that they show up and there's no subsequent EGFR that disqualifies them, they are provisionally eligible. So in this case, you would also add when they are scheduled to see the nephrologist. So I'll go ahead and say, for my example, they're scheduled for the 28th, 2 weeks from today. Did they nominate a family member or a caregiver to participate? So that they're welcome to suggest someone to be a study partner with them, but they don't have to. And then at the very bottom here, we do collect demographics for all eligible patients, whether they are approached or not approached, consent or decline. All of those are folks that we want to have these basic demographics on. And that piece of things is hopefully pretty straightforward and I hope easy to find in the chart. A couple things at the bottom here. We do have a comments free text field. We do ask, and I've noted it here, please don't include any protected health information here. It's likely that you will need to come back to this record. It's pretty hard to do the screening all in one sitting because it requires reaching a busy nephrologist to have them answer the surprise question. So the best way to sort of make note of who you need to come back to and their status is to refer to them by this record ID, which in this case, at the top of the form is number 55. You can use the comment section as sort of a working space. You could say, waiting on nephrologist, spell it right here, for surprise Q. Something like this might be helpful if you are sharing screening duties with another coordinator and you just need to sort of make some process notes to explain where you're at. You can also make note of this at your site in a secure fashion if you want to make make some record like 55, record 55, come back to this, haven't heard back about surprise question, that type of thing. But again, please know protected health information in this field. The only identifier in these forms would be the MRN. And at the very bottom here, it does give some next steps. These are showing up because it's a patient who is provisionally eligible. They wouldn't show up if they didn't qualify. But it's just guiding you through what's going to happen next for this patient. So I hope that's a good introduction to screening. Please do reach out to myself or Kyle if you have any questions. We're happy to speak to that or speak to any special circumstances that sort of don't fit into the way we have things prescribed here in REDCap. But again, please do always start your search by going to the search dashboard and checking to see if that medical rec number is already in your system. This won't really apply as much at the start of the study when you haven't screened too many people. But as we get further and further into the study, a lot of these patients who have recurring appointments, you will have already done the screening work, especially for those screen fails. I just don't want you to have to spend any more time screen failing them again. So please do start here. And then if you have no results on your MRN, you would go ahead again and click add new record. That's it. Thank you so much.